Hello dear readers and subscribers. The color gradient is most likely the most trending visual motif in abstraction today. A range of colors filling an entire plane, creating a smooth transition from one hue to another. But why is the gradient such a trending motif? And which artists pioneered it and are leading the trend this very day? In this video we will be discussing this trend of the color gradient, encompassing 11 established artists, followed by a visual anthology and some key takeaways with 20 emerging and mid-career artists. So sit back and enjoy. Today the gradient is everywhere in our visual culture. It has been one of the most trending visual motifs in, for instance, graphic design, from print to web design, but also in interior design. And if you have an interest in abstract painting, for instance, then I suppose that your feed is also filled with suggested content of painters using the gradient, as is mine. The gradient is very popular. This almost irresistible nature of the gradient is based on a so-called autonomous sensory meridian response, a physical and psychological experience that combines pleasurable and relaxing sensations as a response to seeing the gradient. Despite this relaxing and pleasurable sensation that the human brain experiences when seeing the gradient, the historical examples of the gradient throughout art history are rather limited. We encounter the gradient in the skies of landscape painters using aerial perspective as pioneered by Joachim Patenir, or the nuanced shadings in Hokusai's depictions of Mount Fuji, or in Chinese ink painting in general. With the arrival of abstract art in the 20th century, the potential of the gradient was explored and discovered slowly but surely. It appeared occasionally in some suprematist compositions by Kazimir Malevich, who ironically used the gradient more frequently in his early and figurative works, and would also become a point of interest for some artists in the mid-20th century during color field painting. But even those art movements that seemed to explore everything that was possible with abstraction, think of post-painterly abstraction, op art, hard edge painting, and minimal art, the gradient remained a very occasional motif, as the visual aesthetic of post-war abstraction was predominantly focusing on monochromatic planes of color, hard edges, and flatness, accentuating the two-dimensionality of painting, valorized by art critic Clement Greenberg. The gradient suggests depth, a curvature or distance, and was arguably therefore less suited in this pursuit to accentuate the two-dimensional, and therefore remained in the periphery of abstraction in silence. However, as the upcoming list with established artists illustrates, a small number of artists were very much fascinated by the gradient throughout the 20th century, as it suggested depth while also remaining flat. The invention of spray paint in 1949 would also be an important catalyst, although it only gained real traction in the 60s and 70s. However, by the end of the 20th century, with the arrival of digital software and digital art, think of the arrival of Photoshop, the gradient would boom strongly in art. But art history is in the first place a history of individual artists and individual artworks, before the macro structures can be identified and canonized. Therefore, it is time to discuss 11 established artists who have pioneered the gradient throughout history up to this very day.
Shen Chen, born in 1955 in Shanghai, China, currently residing and working between New York and Shanghai, is a prominent contemporary artist known for his pioneering work in abstract and experimental ink painting. Shen's early influences include the brushwork of renowned Buddhist monks, whose approach to traditional Chinese ink painting, marked by the dynamic interplay between ink and white space, inspired his exploration of abstraction. In the 1980s, Shen began experimenting with abstract ink painting by deconstructing Chinese calligraphy into individual brushstrokes. His artistic practice places a strong emphasis on the process and materials, incorporating his training in traditional ink techniques with modern approaches. In recent years, he has primarily worked with acrylic paint, applying it in a manner that echoes the characteristics of ink. By painting with the canvas placed on the floor, Shen employs a physical introspective method, layering vertical brushstrokes that create horizontal markings, symbolizing the continuity and transition of movement. Shen's work, characterized by the subtle tonal gradients and nuanced shifts, reflect the influence of the color field movement of the 40s and 50s while remaining deeply rooted in the philosophical principles of traditional Chinese painting. His disciplined, repetitive layering technique adds depth and dimensions to his canvas, embodying a dialogue between opacity and translucence. Judy Chicago, born in 1939 in Chicago, currently residing and working in Berlin, is an American artist, author, feminist, educator, and intellectual. Chicago's work and ideas have had a profound impact both within the art world and beyond. Chicago has consistently championed the idea of art as a powerful tool for intellectual transformation and social change, advocating for women's right to participate in art at the highest levels. Her life and work embody an expanded definition of art, emphasizing the importance of freedom of expression and the artist's role in society. Throughout her multidisciplinary practice, with a career spanning over 6 decades, from her colored pyrotechnics to her early minimal sculptures and paintings in the 60s and 70s, up to her feminist and figurative works from the 70s and onwards, the gradient seems to be the visual trademark, tying everything together. Chicago mastered the use of acrylic spray paint, making the gradient an essential cornerstone within her visual language. Wang Guangul, born in 1976 in Fujian, China, residing and working in Beijing, is a distinguished artist and a pioneer of conceptual painting in China. As a founding member of the N12 artist group, Wang contributed to reshaping contemporary Chinese art, moving away from traditional representational painting towards a focus on individual expression. He is widely acclaimed for his process-based paintings which transform abstract concepts such as the passage of time into visual form. His works highlight the materiality of paint and the act of painting through abstraction and repetition. Wang's approach to art is influenced by the historical tradition of ancient Chinese scholars, treating painting as a daily practice for moral and spiritual reflection. His distinctive method involves the use of uniform brushstrokes and a systematic layering process, starting from the edges of the canvas and moving inwards. This technique creates a subtle color gradient, resulting in the appearance of an illuminated rectangle or void that conveys depth and dimension. The varying tones within each composition act as subtle framing devices, enhancing the illusionistic quality of his paintings. Loy Hollowell, born in 1983 in Woodland, California, residing and working in New York, is a contemporary artist known for distinctive paintings and drawings that explore the intersection between abstraction and figuration, focusing on themes of the bodily landscape, marked by the visual motif of the gradient. Hollowell's work often draws from her own life experiences, addressing themes of sexuality, pregnancy, and birth. Her geometric compositions incorporate symbolic forms such as the mandala, oji, and lingam, as well as the use of symmetry, typically centered around a singular axis, connecting her paintings to her own body and the natural world. The scale of her work is very deliberate, correlating directly to the size of the body part being depicted, whether it is the head, breasts, groin, or the full body. Her practice further explores physicality through the addition of sculpture forms to her canvases, blending them seamlessly to challenge the viewer's perception of the flatness of the gradient and the three-dimensionality and depth it suggests. Jules Olitsky, born in 1922 in Snovsk, Ukraine, immigrated to the United States in 1926, settling in Brooklyn. The artist passed away in 2007 in New York City. A pivotal figure in color field painting, Olitsky is a true master and pioneer when it comes to the gradient and the use of spray paint, with many of his archetypical works functioning as a direct source of inspiration for contemporary artists today. Initially, he experimented with thick impasto and was inspired by Jean Dubuffet and Jean Vercruysse. Olitsky's early work involved pouring paint directly onto the canvas and applying it with rollers, brushes, or sponges. A suggestion from Kenneth Noland led Olitsky to transition to using a spray gun, which allowed him to create thin layers of liquid paint over the canvas. This resulted in nuanced color fields with varying density and tonal depth, as the gradient entered his practice and paved the way for numerous artists to explore the gradient in the footsteps of Olitsky. The spray painting technique introduced new elements of accidental drips and splatters, lending a dynamic and less commercialized surface to his work. Now that we're halfway through our lists, I would like to take the time to thank Squarespace for their generous support in making these top list articles and videos possible.
We did a survey and search for the best website builder for artists, and Squarespace came out on top convincingly. Therefore, we reached out to them, partnered with them, and also created an industry-approved, completely free tutorial with a 10% discount code for your Squarespace website. And if you're in search for a new artist website or are simply in doubt how an artist website should look, I highly recommend you to have a look at that tutorial and to consider Squarespace as your website builder.
Mika Tajima, born in 1975 in Los Angeles, residing and working in New York, is a multidisciplinary artist working in performance, sculpture, painting, and new media installation. She aims to investigate the dynamics of human agency and self-determinacy within built and virtual spaces. Mika Tajima's work explores themes of control, performance, and freedom. She explores the shifting and fluid boundaries between productivity and leisure, focusing on how human behavior and emotional experiences have been reshaped over the course of capitalist development. Some great examples are the two series of gradient paintings. Negative Entropy, featuring large-scale textile paintings, and it collaborates with neurosurgeons specializing in brain repair through energetic stimulation and activation. She transformed auditory maps of brain activity into visual sound wave representations, spectrograms, assigning specific colors to these patterns. In the Art d'Ameublement series, airborne paint particles settle on the inner surface of transparent acrylic shells. This process results in vibrant color gradients on the painting surface, while simultaneously obscuring the view into its depth. Born in 1943 in Los Angeles, residing and working in Arizona, the United States, James Turrell is a renowned artist known for his exploration of light and its interaction with space, color, and human perception, resulting in neon and LED light installations, featuring the color gradients in light. These installations create the illusion of walls appearing to float and include light planes that shift slowly behind an aperture, evoking both flatness and depth, reminiscent of Mark Rothko's paintings. Turrell's work invites viewers to engage in a slower, more mindful observation of space and light. His early focus on the concept of painting with light laid the foundation for his career, emphasizing the sensory experience of space. His minimalist pieces give light its own structure, prompting viewers to confront the limits of vision while evoking a sense of transcendence and discovery. Turrell's fascination with light and its relationship to painting and sculpture aligns with his spiritual quest for understanding humanity's place in the universe, an exploration influenced by his Quaker upbringing, which he describes as offering a straightforward, strict presentation of the sublime. Through his art, Turrell seeks to inspire self-awareness and quiet contemplation. Lee Ufan, born in 1936 in Gangnam, South Korea, is currently working and residing between Kamakura, Japan, and Paris, France. Ufan is an esteemed painter, sculptor, writer, and philosopher who emerged as a leading figure in the late 1960s as a key protagonist of the Monoha object school movement, which became Japan's first contemporary art movement to achieve international recognition. Monoha artists emphasize the relationships between materials and perception over representation or expression, presenting works with minimally altered raw materials. When it comes to his painterly practice, we encounter a strong focus on exquisite materials, such as crushed stone pigment and a minimalistic approach, limiting the number of brushstrokes as much as possible. The gradient reappears throughout his practice, from paintings consisting of one or two strokes on canvas to gradients as a result of the fading brushstrokes, showcasing his background in calligraphy. Jan Vercruysse, born in 1932 in Ghent, Belgium, passed away in 1984 in Apt, France, was an artist celebrated for his exploration of light and color, while also deeply influenced by the principles of geometry. Vercruysse aimed to make his paintings transcend their materiality, emerging from the wall like a window, and is arguably one of the first artists alongside Jules Olitsky to commit as profoundly to the motif of the gradient in abstract painting. Vercruysse's extensive sketches and studies reveal the compositional principles underpinning his paintings. He aspired to use geometric structures to reflect universally ordered connections, resulting in varied visual effects. Some of his works featured sharp contrasts in shape and color, while others subtly integrate geometric forms, requiring careful observation for the viewer to discern them. His compositions often include diagonal divisions that directed attention towards the interior space of the painting or employed optical illusions to enhance depth. Pieter Vermeer, born in 1973 in Kortrijk, Belgium, residing and working between Turin, Italy and Antwerp, Belgium, is a contemporary artist and true master when it comes to his artistic commitment to the gradient. His practice in painting extends beyond the boundaries of the traditional canvas, encompassing large-scale spatial interventions that adapt to exhibition spaces or existing architectural environments. His work often includes immersive installations and gradient wall paintings, alongside ephemeral paintings on canvas and pieces made for the irreversible milling of natural stone. Complementing these works are photographic prints and marble slabs that he reactivates with subtle brushstrokes or color planes. Vermeer's color gradients are achieved through a meticulous, almost mathematical process, rendering the painted surface smooth and seamless with no visible traces of labor. Color intensity and tone are subtly modulated, seamlessly blending to form gradients that lack a distinct focal point. Utilizing an arithmetic mean he has developed, Vermeer performs a statistical reinterpretation of an existing image, methodically transforming pure color into a delicate, vaporous gradient. Anne Veronica Janssens, born in 1956 in Folkestone, the United Kingdom, residing and working in Brussels, Belgium, has developed an experimental body of work focused on in-situ installations using simple or intangible materials, such as light, sound, and artificial fog. As a result, throughout her artistic practice, one encounters gradients of light, gradients of dust, gradients of fog, or elusive painterly and sculptural objects marked by transitions of color. By doing so, her works engage viewers with the perception of the elusive, creating experiences that blur the line between clarity and instability, challenging visual, physical, temporal and psychological boundaries. Janssens combines minimalism and science to explore our shifting sensorial experience of reality and phenomenology. Her immersive environments reconsider the limits and fragility of perception, using properties of space, light, time, radiant, color and surface to embrace transparency, fluidity, reflection and refraction.
There are a number of interesting takeaways from this list. First and foremost, the American dominance, of course, and it's no surprise as the development or the exploration of abstraction took predominantly place on American soil. But also notable are the contributions and the presence of Asian artists, partly due to their history with ink painting, as it is part of their heritage and cultural DNA. We also encountered two Belgian artists, and that's partly due to my expertise when it comes to Belgian contemporary art. However, their presence in this list is 100% justified, as their resume and of course their artifacts ranking illustrates. It is also notable that the majority of these artists, more than half, has at one point in time been represented or is represented or was exhibited by Pace Gallery, showing their commitment as a mega gallery to the irresistible appeal of the gradient at the highest level. But of course, the use of the gradient does not stop with these 11 artists. This results in the following recital of emerging and mid-career artists in a random order as a visual addendum and ontology for this video. Maximilian Reudel, Michael Craig, Aaron Barat, Marcel Crempin, Maximilian Ronsdorf, Jordan Tron, or also known as Keen, Nick Tom, Jonathan Todrick, Ruben Benjamin, Justin Moran, Eric Cahan, Alejandro Jafaloyas, Charlie de Voet, Theo Pinto, Chiara Capellini, Stefan Peters, Kira Kotler, Brian Eno, Shingo Francis, and Peter Gronquist. Perhaps I might not appreciate all these artists as much as I did with the 11 artists from our established anthology, of our recent anthology. However, there are so many good and intriguing artworks here within this visual anthology, showing the diversity of the gradient and also the myriad of perspectives, different perspectives on how one can approach the gradients. It is also uncanny to see how strong the legacy and influence of the aforementioned 11 established masters is. Ruben Benjamin seems to be a conscious or unconscious reinterpretation of Jules Zolitsky's impasto gradients, using more vivid and fresh colors. Georgian Tron, also known as Keen, his Gradients and Gradients is a continuation of the work of Jan Vercruysse, and Charlie de Wood's gradients seem to echo the luminous square gradients by Wang Guangel. However, a clear and alluring thread here for these artists and for the gradient in general is when it is used as a mere visual, relying entirely on its ASMR effect and the fact that it is currently trending. In that case, the gradient in contemporary art is being reduced from a relevant artistic exploration to a mere visual spectacle. This is where my personal appreciation starts to drop, as popularity starts to overshadow originality and the form starts to come without content, and the decorative seems to have priority over the artistic. Nevertheless, the ongoing history of the gradient is a fascinating and intriguing one, and only time will tell how long it will remain at the forefront of abstraction today as one of the biggest trends in contemporary art. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Feel free to watch our video on 10 artists revisiting the curtain in contemporary art next. Support us on Patreon and please consider subscribing to stay posted for more contemporary art. Bye.